Hey guys, so I happy Friday. I just finished a 6 mile run, the final run of my second week of official marathon training. Um, a total of 15 miles for this week, 15 hard miles. This heat is not helping, but I'm very excited about that and ready for my rest day tomorrow and then to start on week three of many. In the meantime, on my long runs, I tend to sort of think about the week that was. It's a great time for reflection. And this run, I was thinking a lot about the fact that in the middle of the summer, unexpectedly, two separate people came up to me and asked me for my advice on depression. They each have loved ones, who are going through something right now, and they wanted my advice. First and foremost, my advice to them was find somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. You know, um, Clearly, if somebody is suffering from depression, they should not be ashamed to go and find a professional to help them. Sometimes they need, you know, just therapy, sometimes medication, and they should not be ashamed of any of that whatsoever. The second thing is that depression really does affect more than the depressed. It really is a community, issue. I was born lucky enough that, on a happiness scale, at a resting state of happiness, I'm easily an eight or a nine, and I realize how lucky I am to have that, where I don't really ever feel sadness for no reason. On a rare occasion, I do, but primarily, I go from happy to frustrated or angry, and I sort of skip sad. Um, and it's interesting when you have kids how different they all are. And I have, on one hand, I have one of my three children who is a 10 out of 10 on a happiness scale all the time. And I have another child who is, closer to a four or five when nothing is happening. And when life starts getting turbulent, it drops below that. So I came from a life where I had no knowledge or interest really in depression to one where depression really started affecting my life. And I started to look into it. And I started to read a lot on positive psychology and what makes people happier or sadder. And one thing that came from Martin Seligman, which is he's the founder of positive psychology, was something that we implemented in our family, and we have been doing it for years now. And I really love this activity. Every night before bed, we do our favorite three. So we all gather together, and if I'm at work, I try to call home. Sometimes I'm not able to, but Rachel does it with the kids without me. Um, and that is our favorite three. We go around the room, and whether it was an amazing day or a horrible day, we think of our favorite three things of the day. And each of us take turns telling our favorite three of the day. And the reason for this is pretty interesting. And it takes me back to 2007 when Rachel and I went on a trip to Arizona for Cold Stone training. Uh, we were not exactly world travelers then. We had an infant at home, so we never really got out. But we went over to Arizona, and Rachel brought Aton, our infant at the time, with us. And I was in class all day, so Rachel drove the rental car around. And I believe the car was a Dodge Charger or something like that, a real odd looking car at the time. And that's what we just happened to get at the rental company. And Rachel was driving that car everywhere, and it really gave her a sense of freedom. Yeah, and she was exploring. It was awesome. She loved it, and she really fell in love with that car. And it was such an odd looking car, but we had never seen that car before. To the point where we even discussed, and clearly we're not car people, we came to the conclusion that, oh, maybe this is one of those West Coast cars. Maybe it just hasn't made it to the East Coast. Now, if that concept of car where it's only on West Coast or East Coast actually exists, I don't know about it. But at the time, we thought that was more likely than the fact that we had never just by chance seen this car. But at the end of our trip, we went back to Baltimore, and we went to our car that was in long-term parking, and right next to our car was parked a Dodge Charger. And we thought, wow, that's the craziest coincidence in the world. We then got in our car and started driving home, and we're on 695, the Beltway here, and we passed a Dodge Charger. And we thought, this is really odd. Like, what are the chances? And we really started flipping out when we then pulled into our home, and two doors down from us, we saw parked a Dodge Charger. Our neighbor drove a Dodge Charger. So this freaked us out because either in the week that we were in Arizona, everybody in the world bought a Dodge Charger, or they've always been around and we never saw them. We just never noticed them. And that seemed like a really odd proposition. What actually happened was exactly that. Our brains need to do so much work. They have so much work to do and so many things to notice that we can't focus on everything. We can't notice everything. Otherwise, we would walk around the world with a sense of sensory overload at all times. We once went skydiving. You jump out of the airplane and you're hit often, and I had this, with this sense of sensory overload. Suddenly there's so many sights, so many sounds, so many sensations that you never have felt before in your life that your brain is overloaded with all of it and it shuts off. And luckily, I had a very handsome man strapped to my back, long story, who was able to pull the cord so we didn't crash into the ground. Because if I was left on my own, I would have just stayed blacked out until I hit the ground. I'm pretty convinced of that. So in order for our brains not to get sensory overload on a daily basis, our brains are very good at filtering things out. Just like our email system filters out all the stuff that seems irrelevant. All the junk mail goes straight to the junk mail folder. So do our brains. We filter out everything that seems like inconsequential to us, the things that don't matter. And the Dodge Charger, along with every other car on the road, seemed inconsequential. So we never noticed that car. We had never had a reason to, until we went to Arizona and drove it, and Rachel fell in love with it, and it was, synonymous with her Miss Independence. And we come back, and suddenly it's a significant thing to us, and so we start noticing it everywhere. So the tie into the favorite three, it works the same way. Some of us are focused more on the positive things in life, and we're not really known as realists. We're more dreamers, and sometimes that gets us in a lot of trouble. I know it's gotten me in a lot of trouble, and that's why I like having Rachel, the realist, around, to keep me grounded and to open my eyes to those realities that I might just totally not notice. But that's out there. For me, I naturally filter out the bad things, and I don't even notice them. My eyes are always scanning for the good in life, and that's what I'm noticing. Now, somebody with a more realist mentality, somebody who also would be more prone to things like depression, their brain filters things the other way. Their brain, like an accountant's brain or a critical lawyer, people who notice details for a living, their brains are trained and or naturally select out the good. They are looking for the problems. People who go to work every day and their job is to solve problems, they look for the problems at work all day, and so they have trained their brains to see the problems. And therefore, when they go through their day, their brain sends the good things, the good experiences, the positive things right to the spam filter and only allows in the negative. And that can be very unhealthy, and that can lead to depression. So at the end of every night, we sit down as a family, or most of us are laying in bed, or I'm conked out on the floor by this point because it's real late, almost 8 o'clock at night. And we go around the room and everybody gives their favorite three. And this is the most important on the days when you can't think of it. You can't think of three. We make the kids or ourselves stretch and find those three awesome things that happened that day. Some days it's easy. Some days it's a trip to Myrtle Beach where we did this, this, and this. We went swimming and we held a monkey and we, went on a roller coaster. But it's more those days when what I do today, all I did was go to school. But then you think and you think because you're not allowed to go to bed until you give your favorite three, and you find, yeah, there was that kid that was nice to me at lunch and invited me to sit down next to them. There was that person who, that homeless person that we drove past, and I rolled down my window and gave her a sandwich. And you start finding those silver linings in that bad day. And by doing this night after night, you are training your brain to only think, to see the positive, to not filter it out. You're training your brain that these are the messages that you want to read. And this is the tip that I gave these two people who came to me, about their friends, their loved ones. And I told them if they're already, depressed, seek out professional help. But, something to try and something for the future and something, to help, with their filtering system is this activity, this nightly activity of doing our favorite three. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great weekend and a Shabbat Shalom.